What's going on, Minties? The Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition. And today, I'm going to talk about the Marvel Epic Collection, what they are and where they fit in, and what the differences are in between these and trade paperbacks and omnis. It's a question that I have been asked on my channel very many times, so I figured I'd take the time to make a whole episode about them. And also, stay tuned to the very end for a contest. Now, before I get started, I'd like to say a few words from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. Cheap Graphic Novels prides itself on packaging your books so they arrive safely and in an excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. And check out their bargain bin for even greater deals up to 90% off cover price. Now, Cheap Graphic Novels is currently running a special promotion for you Minties. Let them know you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you will receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. And that's only open to U.S. residents. Right off the bat, what I love about this is look at those spines. Look at the colors. Yes, each one of the pictures on the spine at the bottom is different, but they're all the same color. That way you know you're getting an Iron Man book if it's yellow, or a Captain America book if it's red, or I guess Amazing Spider-Man as well. And now the tone of the earlier volumes are a little bit different shade, but it looks like now they are consistent. Alright, so let's take this back to 2013 with the very first Epic collection, or the one that's labeled an Epic. And let's look at that. So it all began in September of 2013 with this book right here, Iron Man, The Enemy Within. And it's actually volume 10, but we'll talk about that here in a second. Because as you can tell, there is no number on the spines of any of these books. And to me, that's one of the greatest moves that Marvel ever did, was put this number in the back and keep the numbers out of the spine. Because we all know from booksellers and all the lists that we see at the end of the year from Diamond, that numbers as they go up sell less and less. So number 1 always sells more than number 5, for example. Right here in the back, it can tell you what the contents of the book are. So for example, this is Iron Man 158 to 177 and containing annual number 5. It also tells you the years that the stories were told. And a little synopsis of what it was, or what the story's about. Now, what was pretty smart about this, I thought, was this came out right after this omnibus right here. This is Iron Man by David Michelinie and Bob Layton and John Romita Jr. And as you can tell from the back here, this takes us all the way from Iron Man 115 to 157. So what did they do? Marvel released this that takes us from 158 to 177 and, like I said, annual number 5. That means that this follows up right after this book right here. Odds are we were probably not going to get another omnibus, and that's why they decided to do this. And before we had these things called essentials. They were trade paperbacks, much like phone books. I was never a fan of them because they were all in black and white. And as you can tell, everything here is printed in color. Not only just black and white, but even the pages were just really cruddy material. Whereas these are really nice and thick. For the most part, some of them have changed. But this is what kicked it off. So we had one title, and we knew of 3 others. We knew of Avengers: The Final Threat, which is right over here. And then we also knew that Amazing Spider-Man was going to get one. It was going to be the Cosmic Adventures, this volume right here. And like I said, Iron Man. And then we got this book right here. This was the 4th book released in 2013. So the very first 4. This is Thor, The War of the Pantheons. And then after that, we had everybody join in. We had the X-Men, we had Wolverine, the Fantastic Four, the Defenders, Excalibur, all the X titles, X-Factor, just about everything. Well, Generation X, one day, right? One day. Baby steps, baby steps. And yes, now the library has grown quite big. We've got all kinds of titles. Besides the ones I've just shown you all, we've got a lot other things. One of the things they did that some people love, such as myself, and some people don't understand why, is release them out of chronological order. For example, Iron Man Volume 10 came out before Volume 1, which is the Golden Avenger. And that's to showcase stories, really, because not everybody's a fan of the Silver Age. So not everybody's going to buy them in chronological order as they come out. They would rather collect stories, or stories that have never been collected in Marvel Masterworks, or in any other trade paperback format. I do want to point out one very important thing, and that is that not everything is collected. For example, I'll use Iron Man. We have volumes 1, 2, and 3 out, and then we have a volume 10. So we have like all this big gap in the 70s that is missing. I'm sure they will come out eventually, but a lot of titles are like this Captain America. There is nothing really that has been completed yet, but correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below. So if you are a completist, this is the way to do it, but it's going to take a while. In the meantime, you can get other trade paperbacks or Omnis or Marvel Premieres to kind of fill in those gaps too. What is the difference between an Epic Collection and a trade paperback, right? And I'll get to that here in a second. But the idea was originally to take these characters all the way to the end of their volume 1s, which for some of them were right during the Onslaught saga. So right before Heroes Reborn. I'll use the Fantastic Four as an example. This is Strange Days, which is volume 25 of the Fantastic Four Epic Collection, collecting issues 403 to 416, and then Fantastic Four: The Legend and Marvel Onslaught, the crossover event. So this takes us all the way to Onslaught. Now, if that is right, this is the final Epic Collection of the Fantastic Four, but the story continues, because everything Marvel went and loaned the characters over to some of the Image creators. This is Fantastic Four by Jim Lee. This is during the Heroes Reborn. Now, during the Heroes Return era, when the characters were brought back to Marvel, this is the new collection. This is the Fantastic Four Heroes Return Complete Collection. As you can see, there is no Epic Collection, right? Because this is volume 2. Now, that's not always the case, though, because we also have Wolverine over here. So we have Wolverine, I believe this is volume 2, yeah, which is Back to the Basics. And then we have The Dying Game, which is pre-Onslaught. But then we have this right here, which is Shadow of the Apocalypse, or Shadow of Apocalypse, which is right after Onslaught and around the 12 storyline. So now that could be because Wolverine really didn't have a stopping point. He didn't have a volume 2 until much later. So they can keep continuing with this line as to not confuse new readers. So I think that's pretty cool. But apparently if it was a volume 1, then you stop during the Onslaught. And I know Kurt and I talked about, well, where do you stop Spider-Man? Well, I think Spider-Man has to stop right before the next chapter. That's where I would logically stop Spider-Man Epic Collections. But that's just me. Now that I've shown you a little bit of the history of the Epic Collection, let's talk about the books themselves. As you can tell, they're thick, and they hold about 20 issues each. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. And I mentioned the price already. But let's compare them. They are some of these. Like this right here is the Fantastic Four that I was holding earlier. Holds about 17 issues. It's the same size, I think the paper quality, to me, is a lot better in the Epic Collections. I like this paper. I think the art really pops out with this paper. This complete collection has really glossy paper. And not that it's bad, but for some reason, I don't know what it is, but I like the paper in this better. Now, I know not all Epics are the same, but let's compare it to a size of a modern trade paperback, which is here, Ironheart, only containing the first 6 issues of Ironheart, whereas Fantastic Four and Iron Man collect about 20. Now, the retail price of Ironheart is $17.99, and of course, the retail price of Iron Man and Fantastic Four is $39.99, as I mentioned earlier. Here it is compared to that Omnibus that I showed off earlier. Really quick. Of course, the Omnibus is bigger. Retail price of an Omnibus is $99.99 up to $125. It's wider, also thicker, but probably 2 Epics are contained in one Omnibus. Sometimes 1.5, sometimes 2.5, depending on what the contents are of the books. Now I'm going to compare the Epic Collection, as promised, to other trade paperback lines and hardcovers. So here's the Incredible Hulk. Here is one of the newer Marvel Now Incredible Hulk books. You can see the spine is different. That's right, because all the spines for the Epic Collection look just like this, except different colors, of course. You have Marvel Epic Collection up at the top, the title of the book of the character, and then the name of said collection. And then, of course, the character down here. And I've already shown you that plenty of times. Each one being $39.99. Unless you're in Canada, it's a little more. Here it is compared to, this is just another trade paperback collecting the John Byrne and Ron Garney run. You can tell the spines are a lot different. And I'm just using Hulk as an example. Here it is to the Visionaries, which these no longer come out. The Visionaries lines by Peter David. They're being replaced by these, actually. So volume 8 of the Visionaries leads into directly to Ghosts of the Past Epic Collection. And here it is compared to the other defunct line, the Marvel Premiere line. There you go. The hardcover looks taller, but it's really not. I've already shown you guys the different types of collections there are for Marvel and DC. Now I'll showcase another book here as I talk a little bit more about it. So what's interesting, like I said, is that they are done in non-chronological order, so they bounce back and forth. Like you would get a volume 9 release, then a volume 1, then a volume 16 of the same character. Because what they're trying to do, like I said, is collect certain storylines. So this is the Dawn's Early Light. So it's either somebody's run or somebody's mapped it out where they can have all of David Michelini's Spider-Man in 8 or 9 epics, all of Peter David's, Hulk, so forth and so on. One of the things that I know I was kind of confused about towards the beginning is how they're going to handle crossover events. Well, we know for a fact because of Avengers Galactic Storm, where they crosses over with Quasar and the West Coast Avengers and Wonder Man and other stories, we know the whole event is collected in one epic collection. I think that's pretty cool that they mapped it out that way. But other stories I'm curious about, especially the X-Men epic collections, because now we have the X-Men Milestone line. This book right here, as I did a little first look at on the channel earlier this month, or I'm sorry, late last month. We know that because of Milestones, that's where all the events are going to go, the crossover events. Now, this is something else I wanted to bring up. This is a pre-epic, epic, I guess is what it's called. This is X-Men Ghost. Now, this collects X-Men 199 and 209, and then annual number 10. Now, a lot of people call these pre-epic epics. I know Incredible Hulk had the Bill Mantlo stuff collected that way. And that's because they're about as thick as a epic, or eventually they will reprint this book, this particular book right here, as an epic. That's what people are thinking. I don't know. This to me seems a little light for an epic, but, you know, I'm not the one that's mapping it out. While I have Captain America's Dawn's Early Light out, I do want to say that for most of the characters, like Spider-Man, Captain America, Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, you usually get about 2 to 4 epics a year, and they vary. Like I said, sometimes you'll get a volume 4, next one up is a volume 5, I think, and then sometimes you'll get somewhere down the road, like a volume 17 or 18, but you usually about 2 to 4 a year. Now that we've got such a big, massive amount of characters that have an epic line, I'm not sure if that's changed. That's a question that I may have to ask Marvel. If I own the Omnibus, am I going to ever be double dipping if I get the epic collections? Now, in the case of Iron Man, as I showed you earlier, that's perfect, right? The Omnibus lines up perfectly with the epic collection that was released. However, in the case of Spider-Man, I'll use this as an example. This is volume 21, and this is The Return of the Sinister Six. Most of this stuff in here is by David Michelini and Eric Larson. Collecting 334 to 350. Most of it, all of it actually, is collected in here. As a matter of fact, this has the extra stuff with the Marvel Comics Presents. However, this omnibus does not contain the Spirits of the Earth graphic novel. So do I keep this just for one story, or do I go ahead and get the oversized hardcover of the Spirits of the Earth? And then, of course, the big one that comes to mind recently is the Amazing Spider-Man Venom Epic Collection, which collects, I believe, issues 295 to 310 of Amazing Spider-Man, whereas the Omnibus collects issues 296 to 329. So do I buy that for that one extra issue? Like, how does that play out? Yeah, like I said, I've always been curious about things like that, but I think I know the answer. And it's a good thing I'm a double dipper. That's all I'm going to say. I know for some people, including myself, a lot of these epics are what I call and what some people call placeholders until the Omnibus comes out. I mean, I don't know for sure if there's ever going to be an X-Factor Omnibus or a Wolverine Omnibus that collects issue 100. But, you know, hopefully one day, and then I can upgrade. That's what I'm hoping for. So I love seeing people and the way they display their epic collections. A lot of people display their epic collection much like this. But this is the way I like to display them. I love to just showcase the epics within the trade paperbacks in chronological order. Of course, what's missing here is the oversized hardcovers and the Omnis. But I love to just go on the shelf and look at a book and be like, oh, this is where it's supposed to be read. For example, I'll use the Trial of Yellow Jacket here. Now, this book is a pre-epic epic, just like these Absolute Vision books. I don't know if that's what they're really called. That's what we call them. But I know for a fact that they happen after the final threat, because this is the way I have them in my chronological reading order. But this is the way I like to display them, and I always like to see how people display their epics. One of my all-time favorite things about the Epic Collection is the amount of love and detail that goes into each one of these books. I want to say this is what Marvel intended to replace. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, the essentials, the black and white big phone books, as we like to call them. But I think eventually the Marvel Masterworks line, which they give as much love and treatment to these books as they do the Marvel Masterworks line. Of course, these aren't in hardcover. The page quality isn't as nice, but I mean, they're almost twice as thick.
And let's not forget, cheaper.
And the reproduction of the art is just as good. Now, I can't say that each one of these has been great, because I know there have been issues, like I mentioned, with the quality of the Venom one. I think it depends on the printing that you got, though. Damn, I forgot about that awesome Mike Mignola cover. But yeah, that's what I enjoy about these. It's just the amount of love. Like, somebody like us, a bunch of fans, got together, map all these books out, and just made them for us to put on our shelves. These are perfect. I cannot push these enough. This is the way, I think, to collect. If you're not going to get the Omnibus format, and even I sold a lot of my Silver Age, like Thor and Iron Man and Incredible Hulk and Captain America, to just go ahead and buy the epics. I don't have to have that kind of artwork. I know it sounds really blasphemous when I say this, and I've said it before. I really don't have to have Jack Kirby's artwork in oversized format. Now, when it comes to 80s and 90s, that's a different story. See? Blasphemous. I think eventually what the purpose of these books, the Epic Collections, are going to be is to eventually replace all of books like this. Like, this is the Peter David Visionaries, where it's all collected in here, all under one format. All these old school trade paperbacks that have been long out of print, or even the Marvel Premiere line that is now gone. Replace all that, and then of course trade paperbacks much like this, which are just collections all over the place, which I don't like, but that's what they're doing. They're going to eventually replace all this, with just this format right here, and I think that's great. It'll make things less confusing for people, especially new readers that are trying to get into the collected editions game. Just in case you missed the announcement when I was with Curtis, when I revealed the next upcoming epics, the next 10 in the first quarter of 2020. We know there's probably going to be some more because we didn't talk about Conan or Star Wars. But I did make an announcement that Marvel did say that all the number ones, all the very first volumes, are going back into print. So in case you're missing out on, for example, Silver Surfer, such as I am, wait around for a reprint. It'll be coming. And again, not released in chronological order. So all you got to do is look at the back, see the dates, see where it fits in, see if that's even the years that you even want to collect. That's what I love about these. It's up to you to build your own library. So speaking of Marvel, I did promise a contest, so right now would be a good time to remind you to hit that like button. Now, Marvel was kind enough to send me some extra epic books that I'm going to be giving away. This contest is open for anybody, internationally or domestic. These are the 4 books I'm giving away, so there's going to be 2 lots. The first lot is Daredevil, Root of Evil, and Fantastic Four, The More Things Change. It's volume 18 of Fantastic Four and volume 19 of the Daredevil. And then the next lot is The New Defenders, volume 8, and Excalibur, volume 2. And that is The Cross Time Caper, one of my favorite stories, and The New Defenders. I think this is the penultimate volume. So if you don't have any epics, maybe this is a good way for you to get started on your epic library. The way the contest is going to work, you must be a subscriber. It is open to international waters. I don't mind paying shipping on just 2 things, two packages. So all you have to do, I'm going to pick the first 30 people to comment. Pick a number between 1 through 50. I'll run a random number generator, and I will shoot you a message if you are a winner within a within the first 5 days. I'll leave it open for 5 days. Again, this is the first lot. Just write down also with the number, make sure that it's not duplicated with anybody else's number. So if you pick 3, make sure 3 isn't there already. And also with your number, write down which lot you want. Do you want the New Defenders Excalibur lot or Fantastic Four Daredevil lot? That is up to you, fine folks. Again, thank you very much to David Gabriel and Marvel Comics for supplying me with these to give away. And I hope with this video I was able to give you a better understanding of what the Marvel Epic Collections are. But if I left anything out or if you have any other questions, please leave those comments down below. Remember, the contest is open worldwide. And again, the rules are, you must be a subscriber. I will only acknowledge the first 30 comments and 1 entry per person. Just write down a random number from 1 through 50. Make sure it's not the same as somebody else's. And I will go in order that they were received, the first 30. And write down which batch you want, whether it's this one, the Daredevil Fantastic Four, or Excalibur Defenders. And you must be a subscriber. Speaking of subscribing, if you have not subscribed yet, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notifications button. And don't forget to check us out on our social media sites at NearMintCon. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also find us on Patreon, where you get things like early access to videos. Again, this was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you very much for watching. And remember, if it's classy and cool, it must be near mint.